Hi, I'm Stephen, and you're watching ZachArcher.
Game of Thrones, man. Almost 2 years later at this point, really close to the 2 year anniversary of the show ending. And I'm still mad. I'm still upset about Game of Thrones and what they did with it. And I kind of got inspired to talk about it a little bit. I feel like I need to get it off my chest because I saw, because I've been subscribed to the YouTube channel and follow the Instagram page, and they started posting about the 10-year anniversary, the Iron anniversary of Game of Thrones. And it really triggered something in me. I was like, oh yeah, that show existed. It's almost like I blocked it out of my mind after the series ended. And it's really sad to say, because if you asked me 4 years ago what my favorite show was, it would have been easy. It would have been easy for me. Game of Thrones, without a doubt, no question. Now I don't even know if Game of Thrones is in the top 5, top 10. It's crazy how much mishandling the end of a show can really ruin it for you, because the rewatch value of it is diminished greatly. You're almost better off stopping before the last season, which is crazy, because they were so set up to have we could have had a predictable ending, but it would have been far better than what we ended up with. The problem is that it's so sad what they did with Daenerys is the biggest crime, of course. She was such an inspirational character, and this is how it ended up, and that it was so rushed. Even though I wouldn't have agreed with it if they had made the decision to make her go that route, they could have obviously handled it a lot better. And the fact that the directors, D&D, were given the opportunity to have more episodes, more seasons, more budget if they wanted, whatever they wanted, really, the HBO was willing to give to them, because this was the most popular show on television. And they turned it down because they were so eager to work on Star Wars that they were just basically rushing through this. And it's ironic because now they ended up not working on the Star Wars project anymore. So you almost got the worst. It was the worst of both scenarios. You ended up rushing a product out of such a beautiful show that they had something beautiful. It was the first 4 seasons. Even the 5th, 6th, and even the 7th to a degree were some of the best television I've ever seen. It's insane how we went from that to the final season almost tanking the entire show's reputation. I've never seen anything quite like that in TV, and it's sad because it was a show that's so near and dear to me for years, and I loved the characters. But now I'm I feel like I can't even recommend it to people because everything goes out the window in the last season. It's so tragic what happened with the series. And now to see the anniversary posts coming up on their pages is really it's sad, because you see the early seasons and I'm like, damn, this was not just another show. It was something really special that we had here, and all they had to do was handle it with a little more grace. All things considered, the last episode of the show, of season 8, it was good, and they did have some emotional moments and really great, some good payoff here or there for a couple of the main characters, but overall the product suffered from the season 8. Just so many questionable decisions. I mean, what they did, like I said, with Daenerys' character it sucked that they did that. But what they did with Jaime and Cersei was so disappointing as well, because it wasn't the predictable route. But that's the thing with screenwriting and storytelling, is that misdirection for the sake of misdirection is not necessarily good screenwriting. It's got to be with a purpose. Not just because we know this is what our audience is expecting, because there's rabid fans on forums talking about it, so we can't do that, even though that's the most logical writing. Let's go for this other route that's going to shock people, but they'll be extremely disappointed. And overall, for the character arc of, say, Jaime Lannister, it's not there. It's not what we wanted. I would have been so much. Everybody would have been so much more happy with very predictable endings for all the characters, because then at least the show is intact. What they did was go so far extreme into this wild, weird, like alternate reality Game of Thrones that it kind of put a damper on the whole show. And something that was such high production value, and it's, I don't even know what to say anymore, because it's so sad that I feel like I can't even watch. I haven't watched the early seasons or even reactions to the early seasons. I used to watch reactions to the show all the time, but since the show has ended, I'm almost just like distanced myself from Game of Thrones overall. But it sucks. I shouldn't have to do that, because I do love the first 5 seasons, especially, and 6 and 7 I loved like 80% of those as well. You know, like 7, it was like, yeah, it was where it was going into the direction of where they were starting to rush it, and it was too short. Things weren't quite as fleshed out, but I was like fine with that. Like, that would have been fine if 8 stuck to that quality. Everybody would have been happy. The fans, like, I've never seen so much outrage for a show, and it was laughable, the fact that it was up for several Emmy Awards, like some of these episodes of season 8. I can't remember. I think Peter Dinklage might have won an Emmy for season 8. And even though I do love Peter Dinklage and I love Tyrion as a character, I mean, he did no wrong. It just seems so crazy that he would win an award for this season or even be nominated. It's almost like the name recognition alone, it had to be present in the Emmys, which is like the antithesis to what an award show should be. But that's besides the point. You know, I just wanted to vent a little bit, because it does make me like legitimately upset thinking about how much I love the first few seasons, and now where we are, where I'm like, I rarely talk about it, and I haven't watched the early seasons yet, because it feels so tainted now, knowing where it ends up. I do have the first Game of Thrones book, Song of Ice and Fire. I do definitely want to read that at some point. It's nothing to do with me separating myself from Game of Thrones for that. I never am able to work up the patience to read anymore. I really would love to get into reading again, but I can never bring myself to do it. So that's a reading thing, not a Game of Thrones thing. So that's like on the top of my list of books that I want to read. And I think that would be nice for me as someone who loved, especially everything in that book. I'm sure I'll love. But yeah, man, I'm still upset. Like, legitimately, it's really disheartening to see a show that was what I considered to be my favorite show of all time drop significantly. Like, there's no way it's my favorite show of all time now. It's like, I could say the first 6-7 seasons were my favorite show of all time, almost. But I can't, that doesn't just excuse how everything's wrapped up, you know? So you can't do that. All right, that's it. So if you want to go to ZachArcher.net for the latest and greatest from me.